Welcome to Los Compas Lounge, a PSA for brown men.
We are your hosts. This is Raul.
This is Javier.
My name is Reuven, and this is a podcast about brown men talking about issues that matter to you. We talk about things that we don't usually talk about in the brown communities. We're just three regular compas sharing our experiences to inspire positive change. Compa, pull up a seat. We have one ready for you. All right, so in this episode, we're going to dive into, something that we all have a vested interest in and something that I think we can all have some fun in. Let's go ahead and talk about how the brown community is being portrayed in movies and in the media.
Yeah, I think that's a really good issue to talk about because, there's a lot of us out there. One of the things that comes out is like the stereotypes, good or bad, good or bad. ¿Qué no, Javi?
Yeah, because when you look at older movies, like when Mexicans were in it, they had typical roles. They never had leading roles. Well, you know what? I mean, I guess there was Ricardo Montalban, Ricky Ricardo. I mean, those were some that were not typical, but for the most part, when they had Mexicans or Latinos, they were just maids and things like that.
I want to ask, I guess, as we dive into this is the beginning. I want to ask, why is this an important topic?
Well, I think this is almost like a bridge episode to our previous episode. We were talking about Black Lives Matter and how people of color are being portrayed in the media, on the screen. I think that has an impact on how society sees us. Last week we focused on the Black Lives Matter. Today we're focusing on Latinos and the images that are portrayed on the big screen and on the small screen, currently as well historically. And there are stereotypes of Latinos. We're pretty much treated in basically 3 or 4 respects. If you're a woman, you're either highly sexualized, or you're a maid. If you're a male, we're basically portrayed as sexual predators. Where we might be portrayed as being criminals. We might be portrayed as being unintelligent, dumb.
Gardeners or
Yeah.
the help.
And then if this is what people see, and then you have politicians who play on this, and then they use these stereotypes and specifically use roles that are on the big screen as caricatures of all Latinos. This is a serious issue. We go to the movies to get away from reality, but when I see a Latino being portrayed in these stereotypical ways, I can't get away from reality. It's like hitting me in the face again.
Well, when I was growing up, I'm trying to remember, but I don't really remember seeing
El Chavo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. El Chavo, oh man, that was Chespirito. We used to watch that as the family,
Yeah,
and the movies Del Santo and Blue Demon. And the wrestlers, those were our superheroes. The Americans had Superman and Batman, but the Mexican kids, we had El Santos, Blue Demon, Mil Máscaras. Those were our superheroes. And Chapulín Colorado, he had superpowers.
What was that? El martillo.
Chipote Chillón. El Chipote Chillón.
La chicharra, he froze you.
Yeah.
I used to play that a lot with my siblings.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. You're talking about that, and then I was thinking about what Latino roles or portrayals were there in kids shows in the U.S. In the morning, the Saturday morning cartoons.
Nah, man.
And you know what? And the sad thing is, I can only think of one, and he's not even a human being. He's a little rat, Speedy
Speedy
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, yeah.
And this
Talk
and
about
isn't that a
stereotypes.
stereotype right there? You know, I mean, like, I was like,
What was his friend? This fat mouse. Yeah,
yeah.
I
Once again,
forgot
like, stereotypical. You're either a lazy Mexican, or you're trying to
outwit
Swindle.
get
somebody.
something,
Yeah.
Hey, check this out.
and even as in a cartoon, this is how kids throughout America
We all
Yeah.
are being introduced to Latinos.
Our culture. Our
Yeah,
culture.
yeah.
Oh, look, this is the way Latinos are.
Hey,
He's they're trying to pull a fast one on someone, or he's just lazy.
yeah.
Fat and
But
lazy.
you know what? It'll be interesting. Maybe tomorrow or tonight, you guys Google, let's see, or YouTube, the first or original. This is for the audience, of course, as well. Google, look for the original or first episode of Speedy Gonzalez. You're gonna be freaking amazed. Talk about some hardcore racist, in your face shit. So the first episode was a Speedy Gonzalez. He's like a little, chipmunk devil spat, just really like high on crack or some shit, and just totally the face, the caricature, the portrayal of him was way out of line, man. And I'm sure somebody said, "Hey, man, let's tone that shit down," and they made him more cute and arriba, arriba, and all that stuff. But the first one is horrible. So I encourage you to take a look at that first episode if you can find it. It's
I
kind of
haven't
sad.
seen it, Raul. It doesn't strike me as being
Doesn't surprise you.
far off when because if you look at history, Disney, you look at Disney, and just the history of how they have portrayed characters of color, people of color. I mean, when you look at the original Disney's, man, they were some racist
Yeah,
stuff, man.
that's
I
true.
mean,
Across the
and
board.
very sexist stuff, man. USC, the University of Southern California, did a study just a couple years ago, and the study found that among 1,200 popular films released between 2007 and 2018, just 4.5% of more than 47,000 speaking or named roles went to Latino actors. Only 3% of them, only 3% were lead or co-leads.
Wow.
And that's not being very representative of of the largest minority group in this country. And a little bit more, just like stereotypical portrayals of the Latino community also abound. Across 200 films examined, approximately 25% of Latino-speaking characters were depicted as criminals, and 17% were portrayed as poor or low income. 36% of all Latino-speaking characters and 60% of top-billed Latino actors were depicted,
Negative. I've seen I guess Hollywood has seen the buying power of the Latino community, and now they're tailoring their franchise, their big movie franchise movies. Like I saw the Terminator, the latest Terminator, and then this one they have like roles of people in Spanish, Mexican, and then also Logan, Wolverine's daughter was born in Mexico. I mean, she was genetically engineered. Somehow they got his DNA and stuff like that. But she was in the movie. She was born and she talks in Spanish and everything. So it's and sometimes when they say jump the shark. Like when in Fonzie, that the term comes from Fonzie when it was losing popularity, and so then you're like, oh, we need to do something outrageous. So then they have Fonzie get on his motorcycle and jump over some sharks, so it's kind of like a last pitch effort to try to revive something that's and so for example, while Logan was doing good, but the Terminator, there was nobody was asking, oh, we should bring another Terminator movie, but then I think that they're we throw in that Mexican twist, we could probably get another audience.
Yeah, we could continue to milk the franchise, the Terminator franchise that came out. Actually, the Terminator came out in the 80s when we were coming up.
Yeah, 1984 or something like that.
Jeez, man. That's what 30, 40 years.
Yeah, like over 30 years ago.
Oh man, we're a bunch of viejos.
Yeah.
You know, but you know what? I remember. You know what's funny? I remember Chips, Punch,
Oh,
and John. Right?
oh yeah, Eric
Opposite.
Estrada. Yeah.
Man, dude. When my friend Johnny and I were kids, we were playing around. We always fought for who's gonna be Punch and who's gonna be John, and the man out, the one who lost, rock paper scissors was John, right? So because everybody wanted to be Punch. He's a
Yeah, it's
ladies'
funny
man.
that me and my brother, we used to play that too. But my brother was Güero, my brother David. So he had to be John. We used to go on our bikes.
Hey, you know what? It was not. We didn't even call it Chips. We called it Punch and John. Punch, like Punch was
Yeah.
so cool. Like, think about Punch. Hey, what's up? Punch? Like now, Punch.
No, he was like a Latin lover.
Yeah,
and
the
stuff,
name, but exactly,
Yeah.
but the word, the name
Yeah.
Punch. Who
Like
do you
Poncho.
know who's Punch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pancho, Punch.
Yeah.
They even Americanized
Pancho.
Pancho. And fuck, dude. But when you're a little kid, right? My friend Johnny and I, shit, I want to be Punch, man. Hell yeah, I want to be Punch.
Dude,
But what-
let me one up you guys on this. I used to live in the west side of LA, and I used to live not too far away from, back then it was called MGM Studios, and now it's MGM Sony. And they would film Chips just like a block away from where I used to live. And so this is my one Ponce story. One of my cousins, Art, and I, we're hanging around, and we were hungry, man, because hell, dude, we're brown and poor back then,
Always
and we're like, man, tengo hambre, man, quiero comer. Okay, man, well, they always have food over there, and then my cousin, he's a little darker complected, and I told him, hey, dude, why don't we go over and you just go ahead and tell him that you're Ponch's son. and then so we're like, oh, okay, dude, let's go for it, let's do it, man, we're hungry. So we crossed the street, we went to where they have like their trailers, and they had the
Catering.
full food catering thing right there. And then we're just like two Mexican kids just walking there, and
Hey,
someone goes,
Ruben,
"Hey,
you're a güerito,
who-"
so you sure said you were John's kid.
I know, I should have said that, huh? So this security guy comes up to us. He's like, hey, what are you kids doing here? Blah blah blah. Oh, he's Ponce's son, because we couldn't remember his real name. Oh, he's Ponce's son.
Well, it's not that you didn't remember. You probably didn't even know it.
No, we
You were
knew.
little.
I mean,
Oh, okay.
what Latino kid didn't know, Eric Estrada? But but we were just so hungry, man. We just want, he's Ponce's son, And lo and behold, who starts walking towards us but Eric Estrada, and
Oh.
yeah, dude. So he came to us, and and then the security guy, they were like sort of,
Messing with you.
they knew what was up, so they're just sort of messing with us, like, hey, Eric, this kid here says he's your son, and Eric like looks at him, he looks at my cousin, he looks at me, and then he just sort of like he smiles and he laughs, yeah, he's my son,
Awesome.
What's your name again? And my cousin said his name. He's like, oh yeah. I'm Arturo. Yeah, Arturo. He's my son. And he goes, dude was so cool with us. I mean, obviously we weren't his sons or anything, but he's like, oh yeah, this is my son. He introduces us to the whole cast that was there, and the
Wow.
makeup people and everything. And he doesn't just have us go eat. He actually sits down with us, and he talks with us, man. I mean, he just chilled out, with us for maybe 5-10 minutes or whatever, and he said, "Yeah, go ahead and eat." And then he gave us an 8x10 glossy, and he signed it right there to my
Nice.
son Arturo.
With this pearly white.
But it was cool, man. It was like, we're like,
That's
wow,
good,
that's
man.
cool.
That's
I
really
mean,
good.
because we, even as young kids, we knew he didn't have to do that, but he went out of his way, and I think to this day I feel he did that not just to to joke around with the crew, but I think maybe something inside him, maybe he remembered when he was a kid,
Hmm. Hmm.
and and he knew this would be something big for a couple of Mexican kids,
Look at you, like 40
and
years later, you're talking about it.
yeah,
That's a
man,
good story.
and I see him on the telenovelas now.
I see him selling on California Acres.
But I mean, but I think that's like that's a positive impact.
And now a brown and proud PSA.
Go to our website, loscompaslounge.com, to links for resources for today's episode.
Where we grew up, we had Raul, you grew up like in my neighborhood, the Anthony Quinn Library. Did you ever go to it?
All the time.
Yeah, right down the block, and then one time, the East LA parade that they always have for the Mexican independence, I don't know if you were there that one year that Anthony Quinn was the Grand Marshal. He was at the very end, stuff like that. And,
I remember Oscar de la Hoya.
oh, but no, this is way back, like probably not 70s, but early 80s.
Yeah.
And then when he came down, like I remember, like I don't even know, like I didn't even know that my mom was a fan or something, but he was past. My mom went up to him and gave him a kiss. She gave Anthony Quinn like a kiss on the cheek and stuff like that. He's like, "Oh, Anthony Quinn," and I was like, "We're like, oh shit."
And then
I got
Raul was
mad.
like,
Yeah. My dad went to go knock him out, Well, here's a shift that I've noticed. Like I remember the movie Cobra with Sylvester Stallone, like way back. Like they didn't even hire Latinos to play the gangster roles. Like they had some gangsters right there. And then I remember that Sylvester Stallone, there's a part where Sylvester Stallone parks and hits the car right in front of him, or like as he's parking. And then the Cholo comes. He's like, hey, ¿qué es tu problema, ese? Like with the like he couldn't even speak Spanish like well, like he's and then after that, Sylvester's like, it's bad for your health or something like that, because the guy was all smoking, and he's what is pinche? Like that's not even something like a Latino would say. Like I remember we were kids when we were watching, me and my brothers, and we just kept laughing at how the guy sounded ridiculous. So like, yeah, but I bet you all the white people are like, oh man, he speaks like Spanish,
And I guess that leads to the inauthenticity of the portrayal of Latinos, in that for the longest time, and it still happens, you have non-Latinos actors portraying Latino characters, and that's been a big issue for a long time. But it is changing. I mean, a couple years ago, unfortunately I forget the name of the movie, but it was up for an Academy Award, and the leading actress was an indigenous Mexicana. And
Roma.
She
Was it Roma?
Roma, and she didn't win. She didn't win the lead, but just her being nominated was huge. And I believe the movie either did win best movie or best director, and the director was Mexicano. Going back in the time machine, when we were in high school, when we were at Garfield High, I remember there was this movie called Stand and Deliver.
Yeah.
Because it was about Jaime Escalante. Jaime Escalante was a math teacher, specifically a calculus teacher that taught at our alma mater, Garfield High School over there in East Los Angeles. And a movie was made about not just him, but more specifically the students, Mexicano Chicano students from East Los Angeles, who studied their butts off to pass the test to be able to take them to college. And when they passed the test, the school board said that they cheated. Mm-hmm. So they had to study even harder. And why did they think they cheated? Because they were Chicanos from East LA.
And all of them passed. All of them
And,
passed that AP
yeah,
calculus
yeah,
test.
yeah.
Our Lou Diamond Phillip, who plays
Yeah,
the
yeah,
the
yeah.
lead.
I know, I know.
Even Richie Valens passed.
The lead is not a Chicano. I mean, he's a Hapa, so
It's all
he
good.
passed, but
Yeah.
but
He's
going
brown.
back to
He's
that,
brown enough.
you know, during so we had that movie, and we also had the other one that you mentioned. Lou Diamond Phillips was in it as well.
Okay.
The one about Richie Valens.
Mm-hmm.
La
I
Bamba.
forget the La
La
Bamba.
Bamba.
Richie.
Yeah.
La, yeah,
Yeah, I
Richie.
remember.
And but going back to the other one, I'm sort of rambling. So going back to the original Stand and Deliver, it was such a big deal. The studio actually leased out a bunch of
Yeah.
buses so that all the students from Garfield High could go watch the opening at Man's Chinese Theater in Hollywood, and that's back in the days.
Just
Man's Chinese Theater was the place to go. I
Yeah.
mean, people just didn't go there. I mean, it was just regular people like us, or not even brown people like us from the wrong side of the freeway.
Yeah, we didn't go there.
Didn't go. But they made a concerted effort to have us go there. I think part of it was, yeah, they were someone was doing it out of the kindness of the heart. Another part was,
PR.
you were talking about it was, hey, exactly PR, and a good, feel good story, they gotta have it on the 10 o'clock news, and this and that.
yeah.
But why did they really do it? To reel in the brown
And
power
it went.
of money,
Yeah.
and the same thing happened. Well, not us, but so now I'm going back to La Bamba. That came out around the same time, like in the '80s.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the '80s, you had a renaissance of
Yeah.
Chicano Latino movies. Blood In, Blood Out was a little later.
Yeah.
The
Jimmy
one,
Santiago Baca.
Yeah, about the funny thing about that movie, Blood In, Blood Out, is that where they filmed it was like a place that we used to
Your neighborhood.
hang out.
yeah,
My
yeah,
neighborhood,
yeah.
and they asked a few of my my neighbors, like from kids from the neighborhood, if they wanted to come out on it, because there was a scene up in a hill where they do the big rumble that he ends up carving something into that dude's, like, I think chest or something like that. Well, in that part they needed a lot of people, and so they got a bunch of kids from my neighborhood, and it's like some of my friends. And it's funny because when we say, there you are, and so I told him, hey, did they pay us? Wow, he's like, they gave us $50 and all the food we could eat, I mean, like he was like,
Once again, do you see a pattern right there? Food, man, food is feed us,
work.
damn it.
like
We'll
that's
work
what
for
attracted
food.
you. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, man, exactly.
That's bad. Good story.
But that's funny and sad and funny all at the same
Yeah.
time. Because the studios knew that there was buying power. How can we get the Latino community to spend money on our products while at the same time us being the movie industry? How can we do it in a way where we don't have to portray them in the way they probably want to be portrayed, and in a way that we don't demonize the larger public at hand, who we're really making money off of? But we know in the coming decades, the Latino community's buying power will be bigger and stronger because demographics show that community is growing. The cynic in me says this is why they were doing these things.
But
Another part of me, the Chicano activist part of me was saying, no, this actually started even before all this. This started in the 60s, 70s with the different movements, because one of the directors, that directed some of these movies, Moctezuma, I forget his last name, but he's the one that did Zoot Suit and whatnot.
There's a movement.
You had a cultural, artistic renaissance.
I see a shift, just a generic way of looking at things. Like in the 80s, La Bamba and whatever, we have a non-Mexican or non-Latino director or, people in power and authority creating something, right? They create this. They say, hey, look at this. I created this. It's beautiful. There's brown people in here. let me bust in some brown people and say, hey, right? You approve of this, don't you? Because if you approve of it, guess what? It's going to reach out to our buying audience over there. If it's good for you, it's good for them. And now we have a shift, it's moving into the 90s and into the 2000s where it's like, hey, no, no, chale. We don't need a non-brown person creating our craft or art and directing all that stuff. We as brown people don't have to put on this little what is that dog and pony show, but we create this for ourselves, for you, right? We as brown people are creating this for brown people, right? It's kind of like the podcast that we're here, you know, we're brown people creating for brown people. It's not like we're non-brown people creating for brown people.
Yes and no.
Como que no?
Yes, there has been an improvement,
Mm-hmm.
in let's say the numbers of Latinos in the film industry, but it still pales in comparison, to
Yeah.
where we're at,
Where the buying power is at.
where and not just the buying power, but also just where the storytelling. Who are the,
Mm-hmm.
like you alluded to, who are the storytellers? We're still not we're still not the ones telling our stories, you know,
In bigger
in
numbers, right?
in, in the numbers that we should.
Sure.
But there definitely has been a shift there. We have seen the numbers grow. I
Actors.
mean, I mean, because I think of more the directors and producers. I mean, I think the first person at the top of my head is Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
director.
Spy Kids, right? And
Spy
All of that.
Kids and Machete. And all that.
Yeah.
And
We're yeah.
and he's political. I mean, if you see any of his
Machete's
movies,
political.
Machete and the other ones that he did, I think the first one that broke out that broke him out was Desperado
Oh,
with Salma Hayek and the Spaniard Banderas,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and about 15 20 years later, he's not just the director anymore. He actually has his own television network, and his whole thing, because he's about our age, and he grew up in the 70s, and he grew up with watching a lot of sci-fi, and a lot of like B movies, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
when you look at his
yeah.
movies,
I was gonna say they're kind of
yeah,
gory, but like you said,
yeah.
kind of.
Well, it's like Quentin Tarantino.
That's what
Him and
I
Quentin
was gonna.
Tarantino are
You,
buddies.
yeah.
Quentin actually helped produce some of his original stuff. But Rodriguez he's very socially politically aware and conscious, and that's the next shift that I would that I'm looking
Mm-hmm.
forward to see us seeing. Not, not only being actors, and actors definitely is a big role. I mean, when you look at Star Wars, this last Star Wars,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of hardcore Star Wars fans didn't like this last one because the main characters were people of color.
Mm-hmm.
Finn was, is black. The
Yeah.
pilot, he's Latino, and the women, were women of color
Mm-hmm.
and openly, LGBTQ. A lot of the hardcore people, they had issues with that.
Sometimes I've been noticing that both on radio and TV. Sometimes I'm listening to like an English channel, and all of a sudden they throw a commercial in Spanish,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like so they know that people. And then I've seen the opposite also. I'm looking at a Spanish channel or listening to a Spanish radio station, and then they'll throw a commercial in English because now they know that there's a lot of people like me that I listen to both English and Spanish.
Now, I noticed that too, Javi. I'm big into sports and everything, so I have a ESPN, y también tengo ESPN Deportes. Yeah, I noticed that they'll throw in Spanish language commercials, and they'll throw in a little commercial to tell people about ESPN Deportes. Corporate America is getting a better grip on what the Latino community is, because the Latino community is not homogenous. The Latino community is very, very diverse.
We're diverse, real, complex people, and we need to be treated as such. And I think the next shift, right, or like where do we go from here, right? That's the next question is like, where do we go?
Well, you know what I think would be like the future is when it's not like, for example, like when they say, "Oh, the first black person to do this, the first black person to do that," the same thing that I want it to be like. It's not, "Oh, it's a good movie and it's a Mexican." It's just it's a good movie.
Period. The art. It's a
Period.
good movie.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah.
And it was written and directed by Latinos.
Regardless of, yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah,
right.
without people being surprised, like, and could you believe it was written by a Latino?
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
that's pretty much when they say like, oh, the first black person to do this or the first black, like you
Yeah.
hear that like a lot.
That's when you know we arrived, where it's just normal, it's part
Yeah,
of it, and we're not looking at color or race.
The way to get there is by taking a page out of what the the black community has done. They have united and they made their voice heard. And when they did that, the spotlight was put on them, not just on them, on Hollywood, and you had Hollywood respond. That's what we need to do as a Latino community, and I understand it's a lot more challenging as a Latino community because we just mentioned it. Yeah, I understand there's differences, but let's work with the similarities. Because if we unite, you know how powerful we can be.
Hmm. Hmm.
We can, man, we could change this country for the better. Are we willing to do the hard work? Are we willing to do the hard work of sitting down, writing a script that is meaningful to us, getting the people
and
together
following
to
through, not just get started,
yeah,
follow
yeah,
through,
follow through, yeah,
complete it.
definitely. I think that's the quagmire right there. We have the technology, we have the tools, we have the desire, we have the genius within us. But like you said, Javi, are we willing to follow through and actually do it and say, forget you, society. I'm gonna do it because you guys aren't doing it for me.
And
We're
stop
we're
being
we're, we're
afraid. Stop being
yeah.
afraid, because a lot of times people, and I'm including myself in this, are afraid to move forward because they're like, it's not gonna go through. That I mean, I'm gonna get rejected. It's like I'm gonna waste all my time writing a script or something.
We have to overcome our fear, and for me, fear is an acronym, which means false evidence appearing real. Just because someone tells us we can't do it doesn't mean that that's the reality, that that's the truth.
We talked about self doubt, right? That the fear of not doing things. Here we are giving ourselves advice. Who would have thought 40 years ago or 30 years ago we'd be talking about these kinds of issues? So, what would you say to our people listening to the podcast? How do you overcome self doubt, fear, and get the courage to actually execute?
That's a very hard yet simple question. It's hard because we have to look in the mirror and tell ourselves the truth. The simple part is, what do we need to do is do it, take action. If we want to make change in Hollywood, well, we need to study Hollywood, study it from the inside out. And if you have that burning desire, follow through.
We have a lot of stories. As far as advice, I need some advice myself. I like you guys because I'm a little bit more timid. I've been afraid to express myself, but not anymore. You know what? We only live once, and life is short. Just put it all out there. Don't let fear stop you from following your dreams.
It's really nicely put, Javi. The thing I would say is, if you do have the desire to do something meaningful, something worthwhile, something worth doing, obviously, yes, go ahead and do it. But most importantly, education, figure out the tools you need. You don't want to be, if you want to go into automotive repair and you just kind of show up on the first day without your toolbox, then, what good is your desire in your heart to go out and try to fix that car? You actually need the know-how, you need the tools. So it's going to take some work. It's going to take some follow through, as we all talked about. And self-doubt is real. It's totally 100% real. It's okay to acknowledge it, but it's also okay to acknowledge and then move on and then figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add is that a lot of times I needed like reassurance from other people, like, oh, that was good, and then that would like validate that what I did was good, which is good, but if you feel good, I don't know, sometimes I think that you should not depend on validation from other people for you to for following your passion.
Yeah, but you also said something important is surround yourself with like-minded people. Surround yourself with like-minded people,
That's
and
good.
surround
That's right.
yourself. Yeah,
I
that's
agree.
also the last part is surround yourself with people who know more than you.
We, as a Latino community, have power. We have buying power. So if you don't agree with something, put your purse or your wallet in a place where they can't get it. If there's a movie that you don't like, don't go to it. Show them your power by not going to it. Those negative people in your life, kick them to the curb. You know, you don't need them.
Yeah.
You know, bring people who will uplift you, and remember to do the same.
Yes. Once again, we had a good discussion and some really good words of encouragement. And with that, we end this episode.
Until next time, compas, peace be with you.
Yeah, be safe.
Stay strong.